Vikings, 2013 present, is a historical fiction TV series created and written by English screenwriter Michael Hirst for the History Channel. Filmed in Ireland, the show draws on Scandinavian and European history and lore as it follows the life of legendary Viking chief Ragnar Lothbrok, his descendants, and the kings and cultures the Vikings influenced in the 8th and 9th centuries CE. Since its premiere, questions have consistently been posed by viewers as to the historical accuracy of the show and, while there are many, some of the major differences between history and the series will be addressed below. Image. 9576. Warning. Spoiler alert, if you have not seen the show yet, you may not want to read further. Although many of the characters in Vikings are based on historical figures, and a number of events actually happened, there are significant departures throughout. In order to create a seamless narrative and engaging story arc, historical events are often telescoped, combined, compressed, or otherwise altered. A notable example of this is how, in Season 1.2, Ragnar attacked the Lindisfarne Abbey in Northumbria, carrying off the fictional Athelstan character, and in Season 3.10 Rollo is offered land and the Princess Gisela in marriage to defend West Francia from any future Viking raids. The historical attack on Lindisfarne, for which no Viking leader is named, came in 793 CE while the deal brokered between Charles the Simple of West Francia, R893 to 923 CE, and Rollo the Viking chief, a 911 to 927 CE, was in 911 CE. Ragnar and Rollo would then be over 100 years old at the time of Rollo's treaty with Charles. Ragnar Lothbrok, the main focus in seasons 1 to 5, may never have existed or, if he did, not as he is presented in the series. The role historical regions such as Wessex or West Francia played during the Viking Age, circa 790 circa 1100 CE, are accurately portrayed in the series but not always the events which took place in those areas. In most cases, the characters who appear in the show, and the places they live or travel to, did exist but not in every case. The village of Kattegat, for example, which features so prominently, never existed. The real Kattegat is actually a sea between Denmark and Sweden and there is no record of a Scandinavian village by that name anywhere. The character of Lagertha, although she is mentioned in the saga of Ragnar Lothbrok, is a minor character, not the mother of Bjorn Ironside, and never was an earl. She is, however, described as an Amazon warrior very much in line with how she is portrayed in the series. The character of Floki is almost wholly fictionalized but is based on the historical figure Floki Viljason, 9th century CE, who founded Iceland. Ragnar in History vs. TV show. Ragnar Lothbrok, the main focus in seasons 1 to 5, may never have existed or, if he did, not as he is presented in the series. He is the hero of the Icelandic epic saga of Ragnar Lothbrok, 13th century CE, who slays a dragon and engages with various other mystical and fantastic elements and entities in the course of his adventures. The present scholarly consensus is that the legendary Ragnar was probably based on the Viking leader Regin Herus, also given as Reginfrid, 9th century CE, who is known only for the 845 CE siege of Paris. There are other possible inspirations for Ragnar, however, including King Horik I of Denmark, R827 to 854 CE, who appears as a character in the series. Image. 9575. Other Scandinavian poems, as well as European Latin writers, added to the basic outline of Ragnar's legend which was no doubt transmitted orally until appearing in written form in the 13th century CE. The character in the series shares a number of characteristics with the legendary hero but significant changes are made including marriages. He was first married to Thora, who dies, according to the saga, or to Lagertha, according to Saxo Grammaticus, 13th century CE. After his first marriage ends, he is married to Auslug, the mother of his famous sons, who he first knew by the name Kraka and who was disguised as a peasant maid. A number of elements from the saga concerning Kraka/Auslug appear in the show, especially her gift of second sight. Raids on Britain. In the saga, he invades Britain once, against the advice of Auslug who predicts his failure, and is killed by King Aila of Northumbria by being thrown into a snake pit, as is seen in the show. He never founds a settlement, or has any interaction with the King of Wessex. In Season 3 of the show, Ragnar and his men are hired as mercenaries to fight the uncle and brother of Queen Quinthrith of Mercia to restore her to power. The sequence in which the Mercian army is lined up on either side of the river, and Ragnar attacks and defeats the smaller force, is taken from accounts of the historical 845 CE raid on Paris in the Annals of St. Bertin, circa 840 to 880 CE. Regin Herus, faced with the same situation, made the same choice. Afterwards he hanged 111 Frankish survivors of the battle to instill fear in those on the far side of the river. Raids on Paris. The series combines historical events from 845 CE and 885 to 886 CE, the two famous raids/sieges of Paris, but with major departures from fact. In the 845 CE raid, Reginherus and his men found the city almost deserted, were stricken with dysentery, and would have probably left with little if the king, Charles the Bald, R 843 to 877 CE, had not offered to pay them off. More of Reginherus' men died of dysentery in the 845 CE siege than in combat. Image. 9284. In 885 to 886 CE, the Vikings could not breach the walls and the city was defended, as it is in the series, by Count Otto. The character of Gisela, daughter of King Charles in the show, was a young girl at the time of the siege of 885 to 886 CE, possibly between 5 to 15 years old, and did not rally the troops or do any of the other things she does in the show. Vikings did move their ships overland in the manner depicted at other times and in other locations. Rollo of Norway, a 911 to 927 CE, was no relation to Ragnar Lothbrok and was not present at Reginherus 845 CE siege but did participate in the 885 to 886 CE siege, did forge a contract with the King Charles the Simple, married his daughter, and founded Normandy in 911 CE. In season 4.8 to 9, the Vikings are seen raising their ships from the Seine and hauling them overland to come at Paris from another direction. This never happened in either of the Paris sieges, but Vikings did move their ships overland in the manner depicted at other times and in other locations. The dramatic scene in season 3.10 when Ragnar feigns his death, is carried into the cathedral, and then leaps out to kill the cleric and open the gates to his army is taken from legends concerning the Viking chief Haystein, also known as Hasting, 9th century CE. Raided with Bjorn Ironside. Haystein is said to have used this deceit at least twice. Relationship with Athelstan. There is no record of a Christian monk turned Viking turned cleric, who was the best friend of Ragnar Lothbrok. The most famous Athelstan of this period was the grandson of Alfred the Great, R 871 to 899 CE, and the first king of the English, a 927 to 939 CE. Main characters in History vs. TV show. Other returning characters who depart from the historical figures are Egbert of Wessex, Athelwulf of Wessex, Alfred the Great, Quinthrith of Mercia, Burgard of Mercia, Charles the Simple of West Francia, Otto of Paris, Auslog, Rollo of Normandy, King Horik of Denmark, Bjorn Ironside, Sigurd Snake in the Eye, Halfdane and assorted others to greater or lesser degrees. Ivar the Boneless is presented accurately, although his engagements in Britain are a combination of different campaigns or battles, as in the case of the Battle of York in the show. Video. 6 to 1338. There is no hard evidence that Egbert, R 802 to 839 CE, was as cold-hearted and manipulative as he is presented in the show, and Athelwulf, R 839 to 858 CE, was not as dull-witted or quick-tempered. Athelwulf, in fact, was known for his patience and consideration and was a positive role model and influence on his famous son Alfred the Great. Alfred, of course, was not the illegitimate son of a Northumbrian princess named Judith and a cleric, but the legitimate youngest child of Athelwulf and his first wife Osbar of Wessex. Judith was actually the daughter of Charles the Bald of West Francia, R 843 to 877 CE, and was a teenager when she was betrothed to the much older Athelwulf as his second wife after Osbar's death. He and Judith had no children. Alfred the Great, R 871 to 899 CE, was raised by Osbar as a scholar and was possibly heading toward a career in the church since he was the youngest of 5 sons. If it had not been for the Viking raids on Wessex, systematically eliminated his brothers one by one, the chances of Alfred succeeding to the throne would have been minimal. In the show he has only one brother, Atheld, who is unfortunately depicted as weak and wistful in comparison. Although Alfred was sickly in his youth, as a young man he was an efficient and decisive leader and able warrior. It was Alfred, not Atheld, who won the Battle of Ashdown against the Vikings in 871 CE and defeated them again in 878 CE at the Battle of Edington. Quinthrith of Mercia is almost wholly fictionalized but is based on 3 royal women from Mercia: Princess Quinthrith, 9th century CE, Queen Sinithrith, d. circa 800 CE, and her daughter Eadmer, d. circa 802 CE. The scheming and duplicitous aspects of the character are drawn largely from legends surrounding all 3 women. Image. 9470. The historical Quinthrith was the daughter of the Mercian king Coenwulf, a 796 to 821 CE, who was involved in a dispute over land rights with Wulfrid, Archbishop of Canterbury, between circa 805 to 832 CE. Quinthrith lost her legal battles with the Archbishop in 827 CE and retired to the abbey at Winchcombe. In the 12th century CE, a scribe at Winchcombe, most likely irritated by the account of a woman challenging the authority of the church, wrote the story of Saint Kenelm the Little King, which casts Quinthrith as the evil sister of the innocent young King Kenelm who plots his murder so she can take the crown. It is this version of Quinthrith that is remembered. Little is known of her actual life. Burgard of Mercia was not Quinthrith's brother and no relation to Sinethryth, but was king of Mercia 852 to 874 CE and husband of Athelwulf's daughter Aethelswith, 838 to 888 CE. The historical Burgard died of natural causes after retiring to Rome. The scene in which Quinthrith poisons Burgard at the celebratory feast mirrors the scribe Assa's account of Eadburh poisoning her husband, Beatric of Wessex, a 786 to 802 CE. In the same way, stories concerning Sinethryth, wife of King Offa of Mercia, a 757 to 796 CE, are along these same lines, claiming she either killed or persuaded others to kill anyone she did not like. The Frankish King Charles in the show is an amalgam of the kings Charles the Bald, Charles the Fat, R881 to 887 CE, and Charles the Simple, none of whom were as frail or indecisive as the king in the series. Otto of Paris was the hero of the siege of Paris 885 to 886 CE, during which he held the city against the Vikings for over a year until they were paid to leave by Charles the Fat. Otto would later become king of West Francia 888 to 898 CE after Charles the Fat was deposed. There is no evidence of the more lurid aspects of his character in the series. The characters of the Viking leaders such as Horik, Bjorn, Sigurd, and Halfdane share little with their historical counterparts aside from their names. Bjorn Ironside did lead raids into the Mediterranean region and was said to be the son of Ragnar Lothbrok. He did raid in West Francia with the Viking chief Haystein and held the monasteries around Paris ransom, but there is no record of him attacking the city itself. Image. 9404. Horik was the king Regin Heros owed allegiance to and to whom he presented the spoils of the 845 CE raid on Paris. Whether Horik was engaged in the kinds of intrigue seen in the show is unknown, but most likely he was, since it seems most leaders then, as now, engaged in numerous underhanded deals. Sigurd and Bjorn were legendary sons of Ragnar who avenged his death, along with Ivar, by killing King Aela of Northumbria. Ivar, however, never killed Sigurd as he does in the show. Halfdane, also given as Halfdan Ragnarsson, d. 877 CE, was one of the leaders of the great heathen army of 865 CE, along with Ivar and others, which invaded Britain. Auslug is far more textured in the saga of Ragnar Lothbrok, but aspects of her character appear in the TV series. As in the show, Auslug was the daughter of Sigurd, the great Germanic hero, and Brunhild, also given as Brunhilda, the Valkyrie who both died when she was 3 years old. The saga relates how she was raised in Norway by a peasant couple who call her Kraka, crow, and conceal her noble parentage. When Ragnar meets her, in fact, he is put off by her low birth, and her true lineage is only revealed later. Auslug's gift of second sight enables her to accurately predict the future, including the appearance of Sigurd's snake in the eye before his birth, Ivar's boneless condition, and Ragnar's failure in his raid on Britain. Conclusion. As one can see, there are significant departures from history throughout Vikings. The series makes no claim to be presenting accurate history, however, and its aim is to entertain, not educate. Even so, it has had the effect of engaging millions of viewers in European and Viking history and literature. Michael Hirst and the other writers on the show take full advantage of poetic and creative license in dealing with the historical events and figures, but maintain the essential truth of events during the Viking Age, when Scandinavian raiders appeared on the European landscape as if from nowhere and literally changed the world forever after.